That's right. The That's So Mets podcast has taken on the YouTube world, and what better moment to do it? I'm your host, Connor Rogers, joined as always, the man, not of the hour, not the man of the night, the man of the week at this point, Joe DeMayo, SNY's draft analyst. Joe, you're wearing many hats right now. I see you on SNY pregame. You obviously had an instant reaction to the Mets getting Kumar Rocker at 10. An exciting moment, kind of a little bit shocking. I think as he started to fall, a lot of people sat there like myself and said, man, the Royals got to take him at 7. You think the Angels would take him. And then the question is, will the Mets actually do this? Will they actually take him? I know everybody's wondering about the money or just wondering why he fell. This is the most excitement I can ever remember in my lifetime, I think, on draft night about a Mets draft pick. I just want to, right off the top, shock factor of this happening right now.
Yeah, I'm definitely surprised. I mean, I did mention on the podcast for the last few weeks that Kansas City was the team to watch with Kumar Rocker. And when Rob Manfred stepped to the podium and announced that the Kansas City Royals were taking Connecticut high school lefty Frank Mazzucato, in my head, I'm like, I think Rocker's getting the 10. And if Rocker gets the 10, they better take him because I don't want to hear it on Twitter. I'm not interested.
Or the Nationals taking him right after you.
I don't want to hear anything. To me, it was, a slam dunk pick. I have spoken about Rocker ad nauseum everywhere I could. And obviously coming into the spring, he was the consensus number 1 overall pick. And throughout the spring, he had some inconsistencies with velocity, kind of had starts where he was 90 to 92. Then he'd have starts where he was more 95 to 97. And there was some concern as to, was he worked too much at Vanderbilt or, just a couple things like that I think pushed him from being that number 1 prospect to more top 5-ish. I had him 6 on my personal big board. So I had him just outside the top 5. But regardless, I mean, this is a steal. I don't know how else to put it. Getting him at 10 is an absolute steal for the Mets. And kudos to Tommy Tanis and his scouting department for not only, getting him there, but actually pulling the trigger and making the pick.
So 2 questions really just about the player, right? I think there's a lot of hype. I think this is a great landing spot. Everybody's hyped about the Mets, hyped about the Steve Cohen era. Obviously, this is a competitive baseball team. They're in first place at the All-Star break. But now just zeroing in on the player, what is the very quick scouting report on Rocker? And the second part being, I think this is the one that everybody wants to know, what do you think the timeline is realistically for him to make it to Queens?
Big bodied guy, 6'7",
huge,
250. Like, he is built to throw 200 plus innings. And when he's on and he's right, like I said, he's 95 to 97 on the fastball. He'll touch 98 at times. He's got a plus slider, arguably the best slider in the draft. Jackson Jobe could have something to say about that, but very, very close there. A plus curveball. And a changeup that it needs some work, but he can certainly, work through that. But when you're talking about a guy that has the potential to be a number 2 type starter, you got that guy at number 10. Like I said, it's an absolute steal, and there's no reason for Mets fans to be anything but excited at this point in time.
Yeah, and what do you think the timeline is?
Oh, yeah, timeline. So I don't think he'll pitch this year, to be honest.
That'd be crazy. They said it on the ESPN broadcast, and I was like, I don't think that's going to happen.
No, I mean pitch at all, like in the minor leagues. I think they'll give him the summer off. He threw a lot of innings for Vanderbilt this year.
That's a good point.
In the Zoom post-draft, Tommy Tanis had kind of mentioned they'll let player development decide what they want to do with Kumar. But I'm thinking based on workload, they won't pitch him in any games this year. But I would imagine they'd bring him to St. Lucie and get him in front of some of the analytics staff and have him maybe throw bullpens and things like that just to keep the arm going. But I think
track numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Track numbers for TrackMan and Rapsodo data. And, they're working on a pitching lab down there. So I think getting Kumar there, I think will be very useful. And as far as timeline, I would imagine he would start next year at Brooklyn or Binghamton, I would say. And he's potentially a year and a half from there. So I'm looking at 2023 sometime. And who knows? It could be quicker. It really depends how he pitches. I mean, when they drafted Michael Conforto, which there's a lot of parallels here for me. Conforto and Kumar Rocker, both drafted number 10 overall, both guys that I had zero expectation that that player would make it to 10. And when it happened and the Mets took him, it just worked out. So I see some parallels there. But even Conforto, I thought he was going to be quick to the big leagues. He was there in a year. So it really depends on how he performs. But this is an advanced college arm. There's no reason for him to spend years and years in the minor leagues. So yeah, just an exciting time for Mets fans.
It really is. It goes back to, something you and I talked about on the midweek show, is that you can kind of see it all developing in front of you. It's not a high school guy where it's like, man, forget that name for whatever it is, 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7 years. It could take that long, especially when you're talking about a pitcher. And I think with Rocker, the fact that he's dominated at the college level, in long spurts at a time, I think it's that you feel how close this is. And of course, overall, I mean, you're someone that covers this organization. And the first thing I think anyone would have said is they need more arms in the system. And something you and I talk about nonstop is the trade deadline. And it comes down to it, they have a really strong top 5, and they have guys that are having huge years at the plate, whether it's Alvarez, who hit a home run in the Futures game. Beatty just was tearing up A-ball for a while and then just got a promotion. Obviously, Vientos has been on a power streak, unlike anything we've seen in a while in the Mets system. They just don't have a lot of arms, and a lot of times that's what teams will ask for in return. So I think my question to you is, and this might seem a little crazy, but you're talking about the trade deadline with this team. Now they've bolstered the system with a big-time arm in Rocker who's not going anywhere. That's not what I'm talking about. But do you think it makes it more possible the Mets would look to move one of the rare non-Rocker arms they have in their system to maybe get a Chris Bryant or some kind of piece where before the draft they were like, we just can't afford to give a guy up like that?
I don't know if there's necessarily a correlation there. I think Rocker just fell in their laps. I don't think they actually had like a vision of taking pitching, like specifically. I mean, Tommy even said that on that Zoom call. He was like, the New York Mets do not go into a draft saying we're going to draft a pitcher or we're going to draft a hitter. We just play the board as it falls to us. So I don't think they expected Rocker. So I don't know how much it really changes their trade deadline thoughts. I think if they drafted Sal Frelick and they thought trading JT Ginn to get Chris Bryant made sense, they would do it. I don't think the draft pick really has any difference there. I don't know, man. So from a trade deadline standpoint, I'm kind of becoming a prospect hugger again. Like JT Ginn
Here we go.
He threw a gem the other day, 6 shutout, 10 strikeouts, 1 walk. Like, I don't know if I want to give up JT Ginn anymore. I kind of want to keep him. And Vientos keeps hitting homers. Like, how are you going to trade a guy that does that? So I don't envy the job of Sandy Alderson and Zach Scott because they obviously need to make upgrades in the next couple of weeks. And it's just going to be interesting to see what prospects become available and, really where do they draw the line? Because Zach Scott's been very open publicly about, there's a certain amount of prospects that we're not talking about. And we don't know if that list is 3 prospects long or 6 or 7 prospects long because this system needs to be rebuilt. There's no way around it. Getting Kumar Rocker is fantastic. It adds, an upper echelon prospect to the system, but there's still so much work to do to rebuild this system to get it to the point where it needs to be. And trading prospects continuously really make it difficult to do that. But obviously they're going to be buyers. Some prospects are going to go, and we'll see if it's someone like JT Ginn or a Mark Vientos, or do they end up trading, an Alex Ramirez who is, a top 10 type of guy, but he's kind of a lottery ticket. So it's going to be very interesting to see what teams want, because that's another thing that we don't account for. I can look up my prospect list and tell you what I think about these guys, but the Chicago Cubs might not like JT Ginn. He might literally not fit their profile of what they want in a pitcher. We don't know. So that's the toughest part about like projecting trades and things like that, is we don't know what these teams like. Just because I like a guy or MLB Pipeline or ESPN or wherever you look for your prospect stuff, just because those people like them, it doesn't mean necessarily that the team you're talking trade with does.
Especially in baseball, where there's just so much volatility in the draft and different opinions, different rankings and outcomes. But, what we do know is this was a huge day for the Mets, a huge addition to their system. And speaking of what you just said, replenishing the system, they have quite a few more picks that they are going to use to do that. And if you want to hear us talk about this more, instead of a 10-minute breakdown and instant reaction from Joe, as always, every Wednesday we have the That's So Mets podcast. We will go for well over an hour this week to break down not just the Rocker pick, but we'll spend tons of time on round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5. Get to know these players, how they fit, what the Mets system looks like. So we'll catch you then.